Hi, good morning everyone and welcome to our webinar. First, let's wait a few seconds for those who are still logging in. Welcome to our webinar, Orange Capital, Charting Pathways to Inclusion. Today, we'll be sharing more information on the Orange Movement along with the offerings from IIX under the movement. We will share insights into the Women's Livelihood Bond Series and the Orange Loan Facilities from IIX. The webinar will also feature our key partner and steering committee member, Water.org, for sharing insights into how they are building market-driven solutions to financial barriers to safe water and sanitation. I see that we have a diverse group of attendees today from all over the world. We are excited to potentially collaborate with all of you in making our joint mission a reality. After this webinar, you will receive an email from us highlighting the next steps on how you can participate in our mission. My name is Neil, and I'm a member of the Credit Portfolio Management team at IIX, and I will be your MC for today. I will kickstart the session with some participation tips. All attendees will be kept on mute throughout the webinar, but we invite you to share your comments via the chat button on the bottom left as you listen in. There will be additional information posted from our team in the chat throughout the webinar. Please post your questions at any time during the session by clicking on the Q&A icon on the bottom right panel of your screen. We will address the questions in the Q&A segment at the end of the session. If you run into any technical issues, my colleagues Raina and Shivangi are on standby to help. Please drop them a message in the chat. Now, to the agenda for today. We will start with an overview of IIX and Water.org, along with an introduction to today's speakers. This will be followed by a brief introduction to the Orange Movement. Next, we'll move on to IIX upcoming issuance under the WLB series and explain the geographies, sectors, our borrowers' criteria, product features, and timelines. Water.org will then give an overview of their initiatives and how you can be part of their mission. We will then give an overview of the Orange Loan Facility, its target segments, sectors, and regions. We will subsequently open the floor to Q&A, so please do stay around and share your questions in the Q&A box throughout the session, and they will be addressed during the Q&A portion of the event. With this, I will now move on to sharing a brief introduction about IIX, Water.org, and introduce to you today's speakers. At IIX, we are dedicated to bridging the gap between finance and social good, providing capital to enterprises that drive social and environmental change, and fostering inclusive growth in underserved communities. Through a multi-pronged approach, the Orange Movement focuses on empowering women by promoting gender equality and ensuring sustainable livelihoods through utilizing innovative financial instruments such as the Women Livelihood Bond Series and the Orange Loan Facility. At IIX, we also have mobilized close to $500 million in the private sector capital to impact more than 160 million lives. We have been successful in launching the world's first social bond, which was listed on the stock exchange. We are also the world's largest crowdfunding platform and are the creators of the Orange Bond. We are proud to have Water.org as a key partner and steering committee member, working together to enhance access to safe water and sanitation, and amplifying our impact in the underserved communities. Water.org is a global non-profit organization working to bring water and sanitation to the world through safe, accessible, and cost-effective solutions. They endeavor to provide safe water and sanitation through affordable financing, such as small loans. They also provide technical assistance, share best practices, and collaborate with stakeholders to develop, implement, and scale effective solutions. They also coordinate with development agencies, governments, and other partners to influence public policy and practice changes that make funds available for water and sanitation solutions at local, at national, and global levels. I will now proceed towards introducing our speakers for the session today. First up, we have Mr. George, Vice President of Innovative Finance team. He works on the investor relations and fundraising for the Women's Livelihood Bond Series. He also supports IIX work at the Orange Movement, collaborating with key steering committee members and supporting partnership engagement. Next, we have Ms. Jaskiran, who is the VP of Credit Portfolio Management at IIX. She manages credit risk for the portfolio entities in the Southeast Asian markets, drawing upon her extensive experience in evaluating and managing institutional relationships across multiple sectors, such as microfinance, affordable housing, and business loans. Next, we have Ms. Riddhi, the SVP of Portfolio Management at IIX. She's a seasoned professional with a deep commitment to sustainable development, leveraging her wealth of experience to drive impactful initiatives and promote positive change on a global scale. Lastly, we have Mr. Siddharth as the Global Head of Financial Institution Partnerships at Water.org, focusing on the technical assistance and product development, partnership development, and capital market advisory. Now, we have Mr. George to provide an overview of the Orange Movement.
Thank you very much, Neil, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. And so if we go on to the next slide, I can talk a little bit more about the Orange Movement in general, what it actually is all about. And so the Orange Movement generally has a broad mission to raise 10 billion USD to empower 100 million women, girls, and gender minorities globally. The difference between this initiative and a number of other global initiatives really is this global South focus and a focus on changing the status quo. So that individuals, communities, and countries that are often marginalized in decision-making are given a seat at the table to actually impact and bring forward sustainability agendas across the world. You can see this by the broad country reach of signatories on the map just on the right of the screen. The representatives from across the world that have pledged to pursue gender equal financial markets, whether that's through the products that they create or the businesses that they run themselves as well. The steering committee and the general movement is run by IIX, but also a number of different organizations that we've really created to have that diverse interest there to bring forward ideas to move gender equality forward. So there's also the USDFC, Nuveen, which is one of the largest sustainable debt investors in the world, Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, ANZ, and of course, our partner Water.org, which we're glad to have here today with us. And so again, the purpose of the movement here is to mobilize capital. It's to change gender lens investing industry from strategy to action and to realize the potential of women and girls and gender minorities as agents of climate action rather than just victims of climate change. If we go on to the next slide, we can see the principles that are actually the foundation of developing Orange Capital and some of the core ideas that we as an organization, but also through the products that we create, put forward to make sure that we're actually creating impactful capital. These principles were created with flexibility in mind, but also to maintain that maximization of impact. They were created by the steering committee, but also considered a number of comments that were made during a series of roundtables that the initiative hosted with a variety of ecosystem actors, including investors, financial institutions, organizations looking to raise capital such as yourselves, civil society actors, and even issuers of capital. Again, specifically bringing together a number of different voices so we can create a package of tailored principles that are actually realistic, but also impactful. Principle 1 looks at the use of proceeds. This is how capital is being used to empower women and broaden gender equality. This could be through financing the development of products or services that disproportionately benefit women and girls, or even through financing projects or enterprises with a substantially gender diverse workforce. A common one here is areas such as sustainable agriculture, but there's flexibility in mind on how the gender lens can be brought to realization. And us, alongside our steering committee members, would love to have conversations with you and your organizations to see how gender action plan can be put into practice. Principle 2 looks at the gender capacity of issuers of capital. That ensures that there's gender diversity across the decision-making processes of investments, whether that is through the leadership team, but also across the core functions of investment decisions. In particular, this principle was created to ensure women from the region in which capital will be invested have a voice and a value in that capital creation. Principle 3 looks at transparency in the investment process and reporting. At IIX, we've seen great value in the verification of impact through our Women's Livelihood Bond series, but also this standardizes annual reporting on impact, where capital issuers will hear feedback from the marginalized communities in which they're empowering, and we can ensure that the capital products accurately and transparently impact end receivers of capital. We'll talk about all that a little bit later on, but I'll pass it back to Neo, who can take us forward on the presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, George, for explaining the Orange Movement. Now, please welcome Ms. Jaskiran to provide an overview of the WLB series and our upcoming issuance, the WLB7.
Thank you, Neo. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As my colleague Neo spoke about IIX's work about mobilizing private sector capital, the WLB series was conceptualized in 2014 as a means of deploying this capital focused on building gender-equal capital markets. We made history in 2017 by launching the first ever social bond with a gender lens to be listed on the stock exchange. This was our WLB1. Following the success of the WLB1, it encouraged us to scale up our ambitious mission of empowering women in the Global South. And hence we launched 3 more bonds during the COVID years, which, while expanding our outreach, also worked towards COVID resilience and ensuring growth post the tough times. Following on the success of these 4 bonds, WLB1 to WLB4, and to strengthen our empowerment initiatives, we issued the world's first multi-continent, multi-country orange bond, impacting around 300,000 women and girls in Asia and Africa. This was our WLB4. Following the success of this, we also issued the largest orange bond till date, which was the WLB6, mobilizing over $100 million to empower more than 880,000 women and girls across Asia and Africa. Right now, we are working on our 7th issuance, the WLB7, which is expected to mobilize $150 million across emerging economies of South and Southeast Asia, as well as Sub-Saharan Africa. Given our path-breaking work in this space, we've been bestowed with several international awards, the most recent one being the Environmental Finance Award in 2024 for Sustainability Bond of the Year. Next slide, please. I'll now go ahead and share a few key parameters about our upcoming WLB7 issuance. As I mentioned, we'll be selecting borrowers from emerging economies across South and Southeast Asia, as well as Sub-Saharan Africa, evaluating organizations from countries like Cambodia, India, Indonesia, Kenya, and some more. Under the overarching theme of women empowerment, we will focus on seeking out organizations that go the extra mile and achieve additional thematic impact. Some of our focus sectors include sustainable agriculture, water and sanitation, affordable housing, and clean energy. We will work with organizations working under these high-impact sectors to further scale up their impact. Next slide, please. Being a part of the WLB series provides a distinctive edge to our borrowers. In addition to the global recognition and international media coverage, the borrowers also gain access and exposure to our database of over 1,200 impact investors. Since our bonds are listed on the Singapore Stock Exchange, this further builds credibility and enhances market reputation for opening doors for other impact investors. The borrowers avail debt capital within a period of 6 months from loan approvals, resulting from a highly competitive turnaround time. And as my colleague George mentioned, we will also be providing impact reports that show alignment with various UN SDGs. All of this is derived from a built-in SDG mapping tool through our in-house impact platform. These reports measure the positive change brought about by our borrowers in the lives of their customers, the environment, and community as a whole. Next slide, please. Moving on to our eligibility criteria, we follow a holistic evaluation methodology where we assess organizations not only on financial and operational parameters, but also on their impact outreach. Therefore, while we may look at profitability and maturity of an organization, we will focus on organizations working in high impact sectors and benefiting women across the unserved and the underserved communities. So if you're an organization that's headquartered in Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Nigeria, or Tanzania, and empowering women empowering women through sustainable agriculture, clean energy, water and sanitation, please reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to engage and explore collaboration opportunities. We will also assess organizations on factors like familiarity with foreign investors and thereby the applicable regulations, as well as their ability to absorb and deploy high volume debt capital. Next slide, please. Moving on to key details of the structure of a WLB facility. Our WLB facility will be a senior debt dispersed in a single tranche, and it will contain a tenor of 4 years. While the interest will be serviced on a quarterly basis, the principal payment will be bullet at the end of these 4 years. And the loan proceeds can only be utilized for expansion purposes. We do not lend WLB facilities for refinancing existing exposures or for funding short-term capital requirements. The interest rates on these facilities vary because of a lot of factors. The primary factor, of course, being a risk return impact assessment, as well as other factors like macroeconomic situation, the country level interest rates, and availability of security to the facility. We will be happy to lend these facilities either in US dollars or local currency based on the hedging agreement. Next slide, please. Our entire process is based on 6 main pillars. The first being screening. We are currently in the process of screening organizations for participation in WLB7. This process is expected to go on until July 2024. So if you're interested in participating in WLB7, please reach out to us. Once you reach out to us, you'll be required to fill in a small, brief eligibility test. Based on the responses of these eligibility tests, we will shortlist companies and schedule initial screening calls. The companies that clear the initial screening stage will then move on to our due diligence process. Our due diligence process, again, is a twofold process consisting of credit and financial due diligence, as well as an impact due diligence. We also offer impact management training and Orange Seal certification to the borrowers, which helps them stand apart as leaders in sustainability and social impact. Once the due diligence is successfully closed, we will move to the loan approval stage. Once we receive loan approvals internally, we will reach out to our borrowers for negotiation on commercials as well as collateral requirements. While in parallel, along with our investor relations team and banking partners, we will also head to the markets for a formal capital raise. The capital raise process will go on from August till the end of October, which will involve the listing of the bond on the Singapore Stock Exchange. As the bond gets listed, we will then reach out to our borrowers for finalizing legal documents. Once the legal documents are finalized and executed, we will aim at disbursing the facility in the month of December 2024. Once the proceeds are successfully disbursed, we will move on to monitoring, which will be a 4-year-long continuous process. This will involve receiving monthly and quarterly updates from our borrowers on financial parameters, impact parameters, as well as compliances to the terms and conditions of the legal documents. These will then be collated on a semi-annual basis and reported to our investors on a semi-annual basis again. This brings me to the end of my presentation. If you have any further questions on participation in the WLB7, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat window and we will take them up during the Q&A session. With this, I'd now like to hand it back to Neo. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaskiran, for the insights into the WLB series. Now, we have Mr. Siddharth to briefly introduce Water.org.
Thank you, Neo. Great to join hands with IIX to help solve one of the hardest problems that we face, that is access to water and sanitation, now exacerbated by climate change. So let's start with the scale of the problem here. $114 billion are needed per year to solve the global water crisis by 2030. This is 3 times the current investment level. Around 2.2 billion people lack access to safe water. And $260 billion are lost globally each year in health costs, time, and opportunity costs due to lack of basic water and sanitation. And this burden is mostly borne by low-income women and children. This naturally drags down local economies and businesses. So the lack of access to water and sanitation is a staggering problem. And one of the key aspects to barriers to water and sanitation access is the access to finance. And this is where Water.org works, at the intersection of finance and equitable access to water and sanitation. We can go to the next slide, please. So over the next we've reached 66 million people with safe water and sanitation in 11 markets and facilitated over $5.5 billion in household and enterprise financing through loans, thus demonstrating the scale of the opportunity for financial institutions, social enterprises, and impact investors, such as IIX. Next slide, please. So we serve these markets in partnership with local financial institutions. social enterprises, utilities, and impact investors. Our suite of solutions include product development, marketing around wash solutions, wash financing solutions, project advisory to de-risk and cultivate investable opportunities in the water infrastructure space. And we provide technical assistance to enterprises and financial institutions working with utilities in the area of water supply, wastewater treatment, and helping them to adapt to climate change, which is the current challenge of our times. And lastly, we engage with stakeholders, including impact investors, DFIs, and governments to mobilize capital for our partners. And partnership with IIX is a great example of our sector engagement with an impact investment firm to bridge financing gap for our partners. I look forward to working with partners of IIX and to extend my invitation to other institutions to join our partnership network. With that, I'll hand over to Neo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Siddharth, for the overview of Water.org. Now we have Ms. Riddhi to tell us more about the Orange Loan Facility, its target sectors, geographies, and eligibility criteria.
Thank you, Neo. Moving on to one of the bigger problems in the SME market, I think it's an open secret that in the Southeast and the South Asian economies, the small and medium enterprises contribute largely to the GDP. One of the lesser known fact is that around 30 to 60% of these SMEs are women owned or are empowering women as leaders, suppliers, or employees. These are the unbankable sectors of the economy which don't get the right kind of finances. The Orange Loan Facility is our answer to keeping these women at the core. Why have we chosen these women SMEs? Is because these are those organizations which has not only just survived COVID, but also survived the climate change today. So like George mentioned, we want to make them the agents of this change. Moving on to what Orange Loan Facility talks about in the next slide, we would want to focus on sectors which are wash-oriented, are offering climate solutions, clean energies, or are doing some parts in the sustainable agriculture value chain. We focus on not just the loan aspect of the Orange Loan Facility. We are not a one-size-fits-all facility. We offer different kinds of mezzanine debt, equity participation, or a revenue-based loan, depending on the geography that you're in, across Southeast Asia and Pacific Islands. One of our key aspects also is that we are not looking at the Orange Loan Facility as just a one-time transaction. We want to follow this on with the technical assistance from our internal teams and also subsequently crowd investments from the private sector. The next slide talks about what we've been able to achieve from the current funding that we've received, and also what a potential investor or a donor can look at or achieve from an Orange Loan Facility. We've been able to garner 2x multiplier by revolving this facility over the last 4 years. Each of our investments have been able to raise private sector capital with the bridge funding that we've provided under the Orange Facility. And till date, we've mobilized close to 40 million sustainable financing and impacted close to 1 million women. Moving on to the next slide is the USP under the Orange Facility, which is for our potential investee companies. While the Orange Facility offers you a favorable rate, what we've realized over time is that all the organizations today are working in the impact-led growth, but have not been able to see the benefits of it. Our Orange Seal is a way to motivate you to get to that stage. The Orange Seal defines the level of impact that you're doing. So the lighter the seal or the deeper the seal, the higher the impact that you're creating, which we assure you will give you the ability to ask for a more competitive rate than the current rates that we are offering. So that's about the Orange Seal, and I will give it back to Neo to take more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Riddhi, for explaining the key metrics of the OLF. And with that, we will now move on to the Q&A section to answer some questions from the audience. We do have a couple of questions already. It is not too late to ask your question. You can do so by clicking on the Q&A icon on the bottom right of the menu bar. You can type in your question anonymously, or please click the send anonymously box. We will try to answer as many questions as we can. So please give me a moment to take a look at the questions so far. Right, so we have our first question. As a potential borrower, how can I improve my eligibility for Orange Capital? So may I direct this question to George?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Nia, and a great question there. And please, as Nia mentioned, do send them across as they come to mind. And so eligibility for Orange Capital, at the end of the day, we've created this to be as flexible as possible. And you've heard a couple of the projects and capital products that we're creating, such as WLB7 or as the Orange Loan Facility, and looking at the Orange Seal, and each will have their own specific set of criteria. And as we create more forms of Orange Capital, there will be specific criteria set out as that. However, going back to the principles and going back to this idea of flexibility, really in terms of industry, and I see one of the questions they're asking about focus industries as well, really the industry capacity is flexible. What we're really looking for is that desire and that capacity to develop gender equality within your organization's operations. And so we as an organization will support that with gender action plans. But what we do need to see is that desire and an ability to move forward with gender equality. And a great way to start that and to be a part of the conversation to see how you can move that forward is by signing the Orange Pledge. And so, as we mentioned earlier on, we've had many different pledge signatories from a number of different organizations. I believe we've got a link in the chat. But really, by signing that pledge, what that does is signal your interest in raising capital, but also raising capital in a gender equal financial manner. So being a part of that conversation, hearing what other organizations are doing, what we're up to, what products are available, that then signals to issues of Orange Capital that you're interested in that, and we can start that broader conversation on how you can receive Orange Capital as well.
All right, thank you, George. So now let's move on to our next question. What if my company has no history of international lending or investment? So I think shall direct this question to Jaskiran.
Thank you, Neo, and thank you for the question. While we believe that having foreign lenders helps a company being acquainted with the applicable regulations, but by no means this is a bottleneck for participating in the WLB7 series, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to engage and take this process ahead.
All right, thank you, Jaskiran. So one of our questions which was asked a few times is, for the WLB7, can the interest rate be based on a floating rate? So I would like to direct this question to Jaskiran again.
Thank you, Neo, and a good question. While our preference is to provide fixed rate loans, however, if a company has a strong inclination towards floating rates, please feel free to approach us and we can consider it on a case-by-case basis.
All right, thank you, Jaskiran. So let's move on to the next question. What is the eligibility criteria for entities to be considered for different types of support from Water.org? So I would like to direct this question to Mr. Siddharth.
So we consider entities that are working with low-income populations serving BOP market in Southeast Asia, South Asia, India, Bangladesh, in East Africa, Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. And we look at entities that are that have some traction in revenue, are close to profitability, if not already profitable. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Siddharth. So I see we have one last question. What are the key barriers that WSMEs face, and how does the OLF help these WSMEs to overcome these barriers? So I'd like to direct this at Riddhi.
Sure. Thanks, Neo. That's a great question. Like I had said before, we are not looking at Orange facility as a one-time transaction. While you are taking the facility from us, what we do is we work with you to make you bankable by providing you the right kind of technical assistance to then go and pass the credit test at FII's banking institutions, and at the same time give you access to our network of investors where you can raise private capital.
All right, I see that. Sure. I see that we still have a few questions here and there. Let's just give us a few moments. Okay. I think we can close the questions and we will answer you individually and via the Q&A. So let's move on to close this webinar. Okay, so let me quickly just go through the next few steps that you can take. So for the Orange Bond, you can become a signatory to the Orange Bond initiative by signing the pledge to spread the word on the Orange Bond mission of empowering women. So if you are a prospective borrower interested to participate in the WLB7 Orange Bond, so you'll need to fill out a borrower eligibility test latest by July 15, 2024. We will then set up an introductory call to discuss alignment with the WLB7. And on passing this screening process, IX will sign an NDA and a basic agreement to initiate the credit and due diligence and impact verification in August 2024. So if you have companies in your network that will fulfill our criteria, we encourage you to get in touch with us latest by July 15, 2024. We will then set up a call to discuss partnership possibilities with you. You can sign an MOU and spread the word on the Orange mission to empower women as solutions. If you are a prospective borrower interested in availing the Orange loan facility, please get in touch with IX Portfolio Management team at the email address mentioned here. To learn more about the initiatives of water.org, please get in touch with water.org at the email address mentioned here. We have come to the end of this session. We would like to thank Siddharth and water.org team for joining us today to explain their initiatives. We would also like to thank George, Jaskiran, and Ridi for explaining about the Orange Movement, IX WLB series, and the OLF. And to all our audience, thank you for tuning in today. We hope you are inspired to join and support our initiative. Do follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter for more insights shared on this session. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.